Sometimes you need to transform your ways of working, organizing, and leading to execute a new strategy. And in one of my previous episodes, I spoke about how new ways of working and how they can help with strategy execution. So in this episode, I will talk about how to create small experiments with new ways of working to drive strategy execution using a very pragmatic and practical approach. Why should you listen to me? My name is Mark Snoekers. I'm a strategy advisor, and I've been a strategy advisor for over 20 years now, working with CEOs and their teams on designing better strategies and transforming their organizations for successful execution. So here are 3 steps that you can use to design new ways of working, and that's whether you are the CEO of a company or a leader of a team within any kind of organization. So let's get right into it. Before we start, or step 0, if you will, you need to get everybody together. So plan a 2-3 hour session with your team. How long exactly will depend a little bit on the size of your team. Then you get everybody together either in person or online. If it's online, you'll need some tools like Mural or Miro, some whiteboard kind of tools for these exercises. If it's in person, get a quiet meeting or workshop room with enough space on the walls. So have pens, flip charts, sticky notes, whiteboards available. Ideally, it's just chairs, so no tables in the room. You can put them in a circle. In both cases, virtual or in person, you're trying to make the work as interactive and as visual as possible. Explain to everybody the context of the session. So what's the purpose of getting everybody together? Something that you might consider doing before the session is that you have one-on-one informal talks to get a feeling for the interest for such a session and then get a feeling for kind of priming people a little bit for the session. You can share some pre-reading with your colleagues, like for example, the 5 principles of human-centered work that I spoke about in another episode, or that I wrote an article about, so we'll share the links to that below the video. Then when you start the session, you just go around the room and you do a quick check-in, and then you are ready to properly start with your session. Now the session has 3 steps. Step number 1 is ask. So the first step is to ask, and what I mean by that is to capture problems. So here you want to identify the barriers that are stopping your team from delivering their best work and from delivering on your strategy. And that's exactly what you're going to ask them. So ask them what's keeping us from delivering our best work, and ask them what's keeping us from delivering on the strategy. Then you give everybody 5-10 minutes for individual brainstorming. So very importantly, individual brainstorming. Give them a couple of stickies. They should put 1 item per sticky and have them think about their challenges, the problems, the issues that they see and that are keeping them from improving their ways of working, from delivering their best work, and from delivering on the strategy. Once everybody has thought about it, so after like 5-10 minutes, you'll see whether people are ready to share. You ask each team member to present their barriers and illustrate a little bit with stories and with emotions. So you ask each team member to present their barriers to delivering their best work and to delivering on the strategy. And as a facilitator, don't be shy and dig deeper. So you can ask them to outline how something keeps them from actually doing their best work, what is really the issue. Encourage them to tell a story of when does it happen, when did it last happen, and illustrate what happened actually and what it feels like. So really also ask for emotions and frustrations. And again, you give everybody 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on how large your team is, to share this. And while everybody is presenting, you start creating an affinity map, so which is you start clustering recurring topics. So you can do that on a whiteboard or on a couple of flip charts, maybe, where you keep the different topics together. And when everybody has presented their problems, you do a silent dot voting on the most pressing issues that the team would like to solve. So you can give each team member no more than 3 votes, I would suggest, and then you can even define whether it's okay to put all votes on one topic or whether they have to be distributed across 3 items. For me, it's always okay to put everything on one problem. I think the more focused you are, the better this will be. And then to finish the ask session, you look at all the votes and you arrange the voted problems by priority, and then you align on the top item, the one that got the most votes as the most important issue to solve. So this was the first part of the session. Step number 2 is ideate. So now it's time to brainstorm solutions for your team's top problem. So the first thing to do is to identify which of the 5 principles of human-centered ways of working that I spoke about the problem relates to. So I'm really a big fan of this human-centered ways of working. And as I said, I elaborated on it in another video that we'll link to in the description. And here, so you just list the 5 principles. They are quite self-explanatory. Be purpose-driven, focus on progress, have a collaborative mindset, work in the open, and the last one was being people-positive. And so you try to find out which of the 5 principles is the most affected by the problem you identified, again, to give the whole discussion more focus and more clarity. Then again, give everybody 5-10 minutes for individual brainstorming on how to solve the issue. Right? And here you can help them with some questions. So if you were able to relate the issue to one of the 5 principles, you could ask how might we add the principle kind of question. So for example, how might we increase transparency? How might we share more openly the information we have in the team? How might we get clearer on our mission, and so on and so forth? So use the 5 principles and guide them with questions. Then, as I said, give everybody 5-10 minutes for individual brainstorming on how to solve the issue. And again, 1 item per sticky note. And you can further inspire their thinking by asking questions like, what could we do instead of the problem that you have? What would happen if we eliminated or stopped doing this altogether, and so on and so forth. Right? And now, again, once everybody's done, you have them present their proposed solutions and explain what the solution would actually look like and how it would resolve the problem. And again, your job is to cluster all the common topics as everybody presents. And again, once you have clustered everything, there's another vote focusing on your favorite solutions. And here it's always important to remind the team that it's only a next step as a trial. So it's not cast in stone, but it's really experimenting whether this solution would actually be workable, it's feasible, and it does solve the problem and help you to work better or not. And again, for voting, you could ask questions like, which idea intrigues you the most, which gives you the most energy, which idea are you most interested in just trying out. And you can also consider what the team can do actually without the need for anybody's approval or input. So that could be a criteria, especially for the first experiment, to say what is something that we can do in our team and we don't need the help or support or the okay from anybody else. And this time around, I would recommend that you only have 1 vote per team member. Again, you try to be as focused as possible. And then you finish the session by arranging, again, the voted solutions by priority and by asking and ensuring that there is no significant resistance to trying any of the ideas or the top ideas. So really want to make sure that you have buy-in from everybody, and in my experience sometimes it's easier to ask whether there is resistance to doing something, and if there is none, then it's okay to do it, instead of asking things like which idea would you like to try out most, which idea do you believe in most, and these kind of things. So make it easy and ask for whether there is any resistance or not. And then by the end of this step, you'll have a prioritized list of solutions to address your top problem, and then you pick the first 2-3, say this is something that you want to implement. So that's the last part where you plan the experiment based on your top solutions. So this brings us to step number 3, the actual experimentation. So you want to decide as a team how to try this idea with what I call a minimum blast radio. So think about how you can make this idea safe to try, so that in case it doesn't work, the negative impact will really be minimal. And again, my suggestion is to try it in a way that involves only your team, and at least in the beginning. So, and then as you get better, you can expand and involve other teams and departments in your experiment. So you define your experiment. I recommend that you give it a title, something like Project Transparency, so that you can refer to this initiative weeks later and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. And you might say something like, hey, this kind of goes against Project Transparency, and then also use that as a mechanism to prioritize the work you're doing. Then describe what you will do. So think about what are the actions that you will put in place, what will you change, start doing or stop doing maybe. Write down your hypotheses. So what do you think will happen as a result of the experiment? What will work well, do you think? What will be challenging? And then you decide on the 3 important things in terms of who will participate, who will facilitate, and how will you actually measure whether the experiment was a success and it worked or not. Set a time frame, like 2-3 weeks is ideal for a first test run. And finally, very importantly, schedule a meeting for a retrospective and a debrief. So this should be ideally, again, a team conversation where you look at what has happened, what worked well, what did not work well, and do we keep on doing this, or do we want to try something else, or do we change the original idea a little bit and do another test run. So that's it, folks. In a short session of like 2-3 hours, you can set up and create your first new ways of working experiment. I've facilitated this many times. It's always works in bringing a breath of fresh air into how people work. And I just want to give you a couple of final pieces of advice and tips from my experience. So number one, and I've mentioned this quite a lot already, and I keep on mentioning it, is that getting started is more important than being right. So give it a try, do something, a bias towards action. Number two, don't expect miracles the first time around. So if your team is used to a more traditional management style, you can't expect everybody to be fully open and trust you the first time around. That you're doing this, they need to get used to working in this kind of way. Step number three, advice number three is see it as a process. You won't be able to change everything at once. So each time you repeat the process, the team's confidence in changing things will grow, and people will become more and more open about changing their ways of working and organizing and leading. Number four, it's an investment because these conversations you're having as a team will strengthen your relationships and have a positive impact on collaboration. So don't see it as, oh, this takes a lot of time and we will have more important things to do. The idea is really you sharpen the saw for what will come next, and changing these things should help you to become better, become faster, become more efficient in your ways of working and in implementing your strategy as you go along. So it's time well spent and well invested. And number five, trust your team. So they know what issues need to be addressed, and they also know how to manage them. So you do not need consultants to validate these issues. You don't need to have a lot of analysis to go into the details of these issues. Your team knows what the issues are, and trust that they also have good ideas for solutions that you can implement. And again, as I said, always remember bias towards action. So do not overthink it. Do not try to change mindsets. If you want to act yourself into new ways of thinking. So focus on the action over focusing on changing mindsets and convincing people that something needs to be changed. There you have it. So that's the exact blueprint, step by step, to designing your new ways of working. So good luck with your new ways of working journey, and don't forget to share your experiences and progresses with us in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and if you found this helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends and colleagues. Let's together create better ways of working. See you next time.